All right, so this is transparency and merit, and I wanted to get into ego, conquest, and empathy. I think I'll start with the conquest ethic. I believe that that is part of human nature, and it is still practiced today in the business world. It is practiced. Certainly, with regards to media, it is practiced. And it seems to have been combined with ego and empathy, the things that are happening today. And, whether it's religion or an ideology, when conquest happens, opposition to that conquest is not necessarily allowed. And this seems to have been what has happened on social media with regards to certain subjects. And I could get upset about it and angry, but I also have to realize that that is what they're doing is part of human nature. Ego is part of human nature. I don't know if empathy is part of human nature, but it's something that makes us human. And I think those things combined are the things that are making our society and our civilization not as good because they have selective empathy, and basically it's at the cost of other people, and it comes often at the cost of fairness and what is right. The same thing with ideology. That also comes at a cost. These people right now, they believe in their ideology so thoroughly that they will, they don't want to debate. They just want obedience. That's what it looks like to me. And I don't know if that is what it looks like to Joe, but I'd like to hear Joe's perspective. Joe, do you have a perspective on the conquest ethic, ego, or empathy?
So, certain points of view, I think, are are being held up and supported by non-stories and fictions, and I think that as long as the position is being defended in a real way and not being defended based on media portrayals and basically in ways that could be less than true and less than real, then I could see that. I can see it working, but yeah, I mean, in nature, I suppose the bigger the animal, or right, it's kind of survival of the fittest in a way. But this is Ayn Rand's playbook. I think you're kind of going at, and there was a time when top whatever it was, if it was bands or certain sort of artists or different kinds of ways of spreading information were supported by rich families, and somewhere along the line, I want to say probably in the maybe the late 80s, it changed from that sort of those sort of movements to now it's very corporate, and it's been that way since the 80s. I would reckon since the mid 80s, where a lot of narratives, and now it's on steroids. Now it's any sort of media phenomenon is supported, held up, and funded by corporation. And so I don't know if that even comes close to what you're saying, but it's kind of interesting how things kind of take position in the world now, and it doesn't seem very organic at all. It's just it's very corporatized.
Myself off of mute. Yeah, things have become perhaps, yeah, things have become corporatized. But these corporations seem to have been captured by a hive mind. And I was basically inspired to kind of do this because Tulsi Gabbard was trending on Twitter, and they habitually call her a Russian asset, and they're not giving out any intellectual arguments. They're just hurling insults. And these people, they talk about the Let's Go Brandon crowd, but these people are just as bad. If they want to compare notes, both insult, but you can't have like any kind of intellectual conversation with any of these people. And it's like, I'm on Truth Social and I'm on Twitter, and I mean, I do engage a little bit on, I do engage on Twitter. I mean, on Truth Social a little bit better, and on Twitter there are people who kind of see both sides of things to a degree, and are able to navigate. But we have a very polarized society, and I think that does have to do with the ego with regards to ideology, and they're just both used to insulting each other. And I also just came to a thought that came to mind, is that people that are really religious, they're really down with an ideology, are rather brave. And that's why you don't hear a lot of moderation on these sites. You only hear the most polar opposites from people, because the people that believe that Russian warship, and the people that believe in the masks are the people that do not believe in the masks, and that are adamantly anti-vax, are the people that are very pro-vax. The extremes are very brave. The people that are moderate, that want information, they're not that brave. I mean, I'm a person that I want information, and I want, I want to be able to decipher for myself what is the best information out there. And to a degree, unfortunately, I feel like that's not given to me in this day and age. And it is primarily coming from the woke left, who really stopped that, who have really been into censorship. It's funny that you bring up the 80s, because during the I believe it was around the mid 80s, people wanted record labels, records to put warning labels on their records. And Frank Zappa, I believe he testified before Congress, and he said basically, the people who censor are the Christians, and the people who are asking for censorship are the people, like everything's allowed except what is offensive to Christians. That's what Frank Zappa said. Now it's basically whatever. Now the censorship comes to whatever the left sees as the disenfranchised, or the protected classes, or their ideology. And if you go against their ideology, they'll call it they'll either call it a conspiracy theory or hate speech, and they don't necessarily have to tell you. They don't necessarily have to tell you what constitutes their forms of hate speech. It's rather arbitrary, and like I said, it seems to go in one direction. And yeah, it's the ideology itself seems rather fanatical. And we're forced to wear masks. We're forced to have mandates. If you have a business, your business is forced to mandate, and you can't talk about it. You can't talk about is this the best idea, and you can't necessarily talk about the information with regards to Russia and Ukraine. And if you give anything against the narrative, they call you a Russian asset. I don't understand it. I'm kind of confused on that, but I do believe again that the conquest ethic is part of nature, and ego is also part of nature. And I feel that ego, combined with the conquest ethic, has come into play. And before, the conquest ethic was done by just military and brute force. Today, it's done through corporate manipulation and basically maneuvers within the law. And they have proved that the pen is mightier than the sword. And they've been able to get themselves in and not allow anybody else to speak, which to me, to a degree, makes them a bigger threat than any foreign nation, because they basically have conquested the information. They have conquered the information age, and it belongs to one group. And how they did it, I think there are many ways on which they've done it. They are the educated class, and yeah, they basically have taken over, and they've taken over without debate or without discussion. Joe, do you have anything to say on what I've said? Did I make any kind of sense? I think I've been rambling.
Oh, okay, there we go. I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's good points. I had heard. Okay, a good example, I think, was the video you did earlier, and so you dealt with first. Now you're dealing with Tulsi Gabbard, but earlier you were dealing with Ashley Babbitt. I don't know what it is with you and these weird names, but the Ashley Babbitt story is really important because, in a way, it has to deals with conquest ethics and this staged storming of the Capitol, and it's a perfect example too of how ideals and points of views are being supported by stories like the Ashley Babbitt story. And there's a lot of question with that whole setup, that whole thing that went down at the Capitol, and I think there's people need to kind of look within rather than jumping into this kind of cesspool of ideals and try to take the bull by the horns within this whole context without having really kind of dug in and done the auditing and worked on their own, getting their own affairs straightened out. And to push the Ashley Babbitt story is a huge mistake. And there's so many like it, though. There's so many stories like it, and a lot of them are just, just complete staged nonsense. But it's there for the taking for people to use to defend themselves and their positions with supportive stories like this. So it's a tricky situation, and I hope that this isn't like, I think right now a lot of people are actually kind of angry about having been lied to, and here in Los Angeles where we are, there is a lot of buzz about bringing back masks, and I mean, I don't know what people need what kind of slap in the face they need to understand what's going on, and to watch people blindly just accept what they're told and do as they're told. It's people clearly, and I mean, when I say people, I'm talking about my neighbors. I'm talking about my neighborhood, my city, my county, my state. People have been weakened, and I don't know if it's the food or what has rendered such a pathetic, wimpy, yes sir sort of mentality, and it's frustrating me so much. It's angering me even, and people are so oblivious to the notion of owning what they can own, and that's themselves. It's that their bodies, their thoughts and minds, and this is all kind of falling by the wayside. So I just hope that people just aren't being sucker punched into submission at this point. So it's a very difficult thing for me to watch, because I've seen it since day one, and I still see the same arguments, and I stopped doing shows about 2 months ago. I just I still pop up here and there, but as far as my own, I've had a real tough time getting on there and talking, and the reason is I can't balance the effort and the sort of research and time and effort and thought that I've put into making myself more knowledgeable and up to par with what's going on out there. It's just left me just too tired, and not just too tired, but really like has put me in a position where I don't want to push people in one direction or another. They have to make their own decisions. They're going to make their own decisions irregardless of what I say. And that was a tough thing for me to accept, that I can go and yell and scream and argue all I want, but at the end of the day, was I really changing anybody's mind? Not really. So yeah, in that sense, it's been a real frustrating journey, and still love it and appreciate it. And I still get out and see what I want to see. I just completed a 4,000-mile road trip, and it kind of left me a little what's the word? I was a little less than enthusiastic when I got back. When I left, I was all in high spirits and excited, and I was going to see some states here that I hadn't been to before, Missouri being the culmination of the trip. And I've come back with a lot of frustration. And in a place like Missouri, where the conquest ethic, if you will, is Christianity, at least in the burbs. Maybe not St. Louis, where there's a lot more, ideas floating around, a lot of different, a lot more different types of people, and it's more of like a hub, like Atlanta. But in the burbs, you have a lot of really interesting things, but it's also a place where authority has ruled supreme. And I can get into it more in detail, but I was really kind of shocked and saddened by the lack of ability that people younger than me have in making up their own mind, doing what they want to do, and living by their own terms, but rather were more. I think they were resigned to listening to their elders, for better or for worse. And from my point of view, it was for the worse. That they were unable to stand on their own 2 feet, make some critical decisions, and instead were more complacent and willing to learn to submit to people they felt have better understanding of things. And anyways, it was the lack of independence that really frustrated me.
It's interesting that you say that, because oftentimes when those people go to college, they will leave, like a certain kind of cult type of mentality, and they'll enter into another form of cult-like mentality. And both can be very cult-like. But it seems like, that, the ultra Trump supporters and the ultra woke, there's no like talking to either, both of them are not going to talk to each other. Although I must be honest, Trump supporters are the hardcore Trump supporters are far more open to conversation than the woke. And it's probably primarily because, and I would say more out in California, primarily it's because they are far more marginalized and weak. And, to gain power, you do have to kind of be a little bit more open-minded. And the woke left do not have to be open-minded, and they are able to punish almost at will. I mean, if they want to punish you, they can probably punish you and probably hurt you economically, and sometimes even physically, but more economically than physical. And this is somewhat of an economic, this culture war is primarily economic, and he who has the gold, the golden rule, he who has the gold makes the rules. And right now, it's just very clear that the left has, they have the gold. They have, almost, it seems like their ideology has the backing of our economy, and both the mainstream media and social media have this kind of hive mind mentality behind it. And how do you get to a moderate state, or somewhat of a place where people can, where human beings can kind of talk to each other without talking at one another? Because that seems like what we're doing nowadays. We're not talking to each other, particularly the powerful. The powerful elites are all, they're just talking at one another. They're not talking to each other. And a lot of times those in power even refuse to listen to other cultural leaders. And we have cultural leaders on each side, and they refuse to meet with each other, and that has been, I mean, it started to really happen during this pandemic, and then during the riots, that began to happen, and then after January 6th, the powerful elite has picked the side of an ideology, and they have decided who they won't and will not talk to, and they, like I said, they often claim it's either conspiracy theory or it's hate speech. And it's like, and you can see the thing is, you can see the unfairness and you can see the hyperbolic language, and there's kind of nothing that you can do about it. You can make a video, but who's going to listen? It will, I don't know if this is even shadow banned or anything like that, but the algorithms have certainly changed over the years, where the average man or woman can't really make it, because corporate media I think has influenced, and along with the politicians, have influenced social media. So things head kind of in one direction, and that's the way it's going. I remember when YouTube used to be truly a place of free thought and free idea, and it's not there anymore. It has been taken over. And what do you do about it? And I've said before that conquest is part of human nature, and those that those that win through conquest, they're going to have an ego, and they're not going to have empathy.
In 1066, right? You have that image up there, right? Is there a movie coming out?
No, I think it's a book.
So in 1066, William the Bastard declared that all land, animals, and people in the country belonged to him personally. And that was alien to the laws and customs that the colonial land grabs and First Nations of America had seen over a short period of time. America went from a country in which more, I think, more than 90% of the people own land, to a country of landless serfs. And then our lands were all parceled up and given as payment to William's mercenaries. I wonder if that book is about that. I'm not sure, but it's kind of an interesting thing.
And one of the things that used to be part of the American dream was owning land, and here in West Los Angeles, that is impossible for many of the average Americans. Many of the people that work today are not able to scrape enough funds together to own land, and I think there are a lot of frustrated males out there because and we can even talk about the sexual revolution, how that left probably a society of incels, just due to the fact that women practice hypergamy. And, there's a lot of different types of things out there with regards to the human condition, and how one fights the human condition, and if you're a free thinker and all, how does one navigate when everyone's like, if you're standing up for what you believe in and everyone's against you? How do you navigate? And they're calling you a heretic for things that you say and believe. How do you stand up to that? By the way, I also wanted to add one of the things when I was tweeting about Tulsi Gabbard and about the cult-like mentality. Gentleman said, he grew up within the Jehovah Witnesses, and he said that the kind of things that these people do, this kind of hive mind and the secretiveness, is kind of similar to the Jehovah Witnesses. The manner in which they choose to behave is kind of cultish in that manner, and yeah, I mean, I think that when you get into an ideology, whether it's a religious ideology or it's a philosophical ideology that can't be questioned, it can be very authoritarian, and how do you handle that? You know.
Yeah, well, monopolies remain, and I mean, I'm talking about mostly in England. In the UK, the monarchs' land monopolies still exist, and there's been accounting for it. It's pretty impressive. The reason for all the secrecy is because Britain has the worst land distribution of any country on earth, except maybe Brazil. As it stands, at least 70% of the land in the British Isles is owned by fewer than 2% of the population. And meanwhile, Britain's 16 plus million homeowners account for barely 4% of the land between them, which is about the same amount that is owned by the Forestry Commission. Just some fun facts, but it just goes to show there's, I mean, massive displays of inequity, and that's what this is all bred. I think that's what maybe this movement, the super liberal movement, is maybe secretly doing this. It's just like a massive power grab.
I think to a degree, for me, what I tend to believe is that people tend to believe what they're doing is correct and right. And when you feel you have the angels on your side and you are morally superior, that's when you tend to objectify the persons or the people that are against you. I think it's ego and ideology that's controlling this, and it's it is part of the conquest ethic. There was a hive mind that has taken over, and they rule with a rather iron fist. And again, saying that governmental agencies are to be the arbiters of truth. I point to the Korean War. We once thought that over 50,000 American soldiers perished during the Korean War. We now know that it is less than 40,000. I believe 32,000 Americans perished, maybe 38,000. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But they were drastically wrong on the numbers. And now we're supposed to believe the government and not to question them when they've been wrong. I mean, and that's not the only thing that our government has been inaccurate and wrong about. And now we can't come on here and speak truth to power anymore. We're not allowed to do that anymore. I just don't understand it. Who decides, who decides what is hate speech? Who decides what is a conspiracy theory? And what happens when the conspiracy theory happens to be correct? And I'm not even, most conspiracy theories happen to be wrong. And I believe, for me, what I've observed is most conspiracies happen when people make mistakes, and they want to and they try to cover up the mistakes they've made. On average, that's what it looks like to me. And again, there like there are people like who've been shouting that this is correct and this is right, and when they're wrong, well, they go on because they don't want to continue it. And I guess there's you do have to kind of navigate through that. And this is this isn't this cultural war is largely being waged through the economy. And there are different, perhaps, ways you can go about that. You can find other wealthy people who will fund you and maybe fund a free, an internet. And I kind of do believe that perhaps one of the other things you have to do is you have to think internationally. We can all say America first, but our problems are internal. And if we can get the technology and the things that are needed to battle an ideology with an ideology of freedom, I think it would be kind of worth it to even look at other places that provide that technology, that provide phones. You might have to go to China to get a phone, but the thing is that I say is China's not the one that locked us down. China's not the one that said that these were mostly peaceful protests. China's not the one that said Antifa is not a thing; it's an idea. And I want to say this: at one time, J. Edgar Hoover said the mafia wasn't real, and now we got to believe that. So we're facing an ideology that gets international money and that has the flow of the money, and sometimes you have to go to other places to fight this internal enemy because it does have the establishment. And I could be completely wrong on that, but I think there's a possibility that you have to look in other directions for the technology, because they're certainly going to China. They have no problem with getting phones from China. We might want to do the same, or phones from India or where else. Anyway, Joe, is there anything to add before I call the show a day?
No, I think we're good, man.
Yeah. So I'll end on this. The enemy of the West seems to be internal. There is a hive mind ideology there, and it's the one that locked you down. It's the one that if you say something different about the war of Russia and Ukraine, they will call you a Russian asset. And but they have, like I said, they have no problem in going outside for help and international to help. So I think to a degree, patriots may want to do the same thing if you're going to wage a successful economic war against.
Certainly, the patriots need to move beyond looking at things from the patriarchal point of view. Just a fun fact that humans are deuterostomies, which means that when they develop in the womb, the anus forms before any other opening, which basically means at one point you were nothing more than an asshole. Some people never develop beyond that stage, and I think that's what's really happening here.
I disavow. I wish there wasn't any profanity, but we had to go there.
Yes.
But yeah, as humans tend to develop, and how they develop, that's kind of interesting. How did we get here? And how did what seems to be a rather narrow-minded, myopic group basically take over and control the information, the information
Right.
within this country, and not only this country, in this world. And again, like I said, I think we have to think outside the box and find any way that one can fight successfully this eternal enemy. Because anyone that doesn't believe that you as a human being are not entitled to due process, and I believe that due process is not only within a court of law, but it's also, within interpersonal things. Am I presumed to be innocent before I'm guilty? And this is with business as well. I mean, do I have any presumption of innocence? Do I get to describe my side, or are we just going to listen to the mob?
Right.
And that's something that has to be taken into consideration as a human being. What do you think as a human being? What do you think other human beings are worthy of? And if you think that human beings are not worthy of to be listened to be thought of, then really, if you don't believe that, I think it's time for people to go their separate ways. If I'm not to be listened to and thought of as a human being. Anyway, this has been Transparency and Merit. Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and visit our website. Thank you.